Welcome to My Private Professor's Innovation and Education Spotlight. We highlight forward-thinking leaders who inspire and empower others to reach their greatest potential and lead tomorrow's world. It is my pleasure to have as our guest today, Courneen. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your role at MSI.
Yeah, at MSI, I am our Vice President for HR, responsible for HR activities across the entirety of our company. We are a large distributor of, I'll call it, flooring and countertop and wall kind of hard surface products. And we have operations across the United States, Canada, and India. And so in my role, I'm kind of responsible for that people function in all of those locations. Prior to my time at MSI, I worked in a similar HR function for another large industrial supply manufacturer. But prior to getting into HR, I spent many years kind of managing in that business. So I've managed, a 1 million square foot warehouse. I've managed a sales organization, and really kind of got into HR by complaining about HR. That's actually how it happened. And so as a leader in the business, I was growing frustrated with the support or lack thereof from the HR organization, and said, I think I can do this better. And they said, okay, then have at it. And that's kind of how I got into it. And I just fell in love with the work from there.
I love that. I love that you took something that you saw as could be improved upon and decided to actually make it your own. And I also appreciate how you have so much background in the actual industry for which you're working right now. What led you to work at MSI in particular?
I had this connection to MSI that I didn't even realize for the better part of my adult life. I, as many folks realize, had products in my home from MSI. So MSI sells, countertop products, natural stone, quartz, and the like. And when I bought my first home, happened to pick out my counters from MSI, and then had some very close folks in my life that ended up working here. No interest in leaving my prior employer. I loved it and loved what I was doing and where I was, but agreed to meet with some folks from MSI. And when I met with the leaders here, I just immediately could tell that the values, the morals, the goals, the objectives, that just the company in general was really aligned with many of the ways that I thought. And I was very excited by the opportunity that MSI presented as a company that grows, much more akin to a tech company than a building products company.
It's got to be really creative, but it's really challenging and probably a very fulfilling role, sounds like.
Yeah, it is. And, I think part of what is unique and what really attracted me to the organization is kind of that dichotomy of, I tell people when things get tough or people get stressed or, we got a problem to solve, I say, guys, we sell rocks. Like, it's not, we're not solving cancer here. We sell rocks. But at the end of the day, the level of creativity and innovation that goes into how do I value engineer a product that people can't afford, and I want to make it so that they can afford it, and how do I create a process that reduces the likelihood of an injury for an employee doing a really manual job, or how do I make it easier for someone in a sales organization to find solutions to customers' problems, and hopefully those solutions are our products. The amount of kind of creativity that exists here is pretty shocking. The other thing that is kind of the secret sauce about the place is we empower other people to make decisions and grow this business. And it is not the type of organization where we're going to make all the decisions at the top and everyone underneath is going to execute. Really, the company grows by empowering other people to grow the company for us.
I love that. And that's sounds like a secret sauce, because so many companies do have that top-down structure. We will share what it is that you do. And by doing that, Chris, I feel like a lot of times it limits the potential of each individual employee of what they could contribute. Not only does MSI support its teams, but this organization is such a pillar in the community of giving back. I'd love for you to share a little bit about what MSI does to participate in supporting the community, in philanthropy, all of that wonderful stuff.
That really focus on healthcare, education, and kind of technology in particular as a vessel for education, and then food and food scarcity. And so, MSI, through its charitable efforts, I think feeds probably over 1 million people a year. We've built kitchens around the world to feed underserved communities. We've provided, tens of thousands of tablets to rural areas, both in the United States and across the globe, to improve access to technology. But when I think of some of the large kind of scale ideas that I just find so fascinating, I am probably most struck by a conversation I had with Manu, and he leans over to me. We were on a flight to visit an opening branch, a branch we were opening, and he said, "Do this with your hand and show me your hand." And I was like, "Okay, what are we doing, Manu?" And he pulls out his phone and takes a picture of my fingernails, and he goes, "Congratulations, you're not anemic." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he says, "This is this thing that we've been working on and trying to fund to create non-invasive measurement of iron using a phone through your fingernails, coming from a company that sells rocks is a pretty cool thing."
Absolutely. I love that example, and I appreciate it so much because it really does epitomize all of the different ways that it sounds like MSI wants to support on so many different categories, as you shared. So it's not limited to one. It's not in your industry at all. It's different areas where you can see that you can move the needle and really make a tangible difference. And I really applaud what MSI is doing in that regard. We do this at My Private Professor on a smaller scale. As you know, like, our mission is to make sure we can get as many students access to the resources they need to succeed. And we do it by giving back with every single hour. And the students that we're able to support now are, students that are experiencing homelessness and in long-term foster care. So being able to work with individuals that otherwise would not get this access is something that it really is the reason why we do what we do. Well, I would like to also shift gears and share that congratulations to MSI. You've gotten so many different wonderful awards of top workplaces in the US, the Diversity Award. Can you talk a little bit about what you do at MSI to support your employees?
I started here in the middle of 2019. So I had about 6 months of really learning our business before COVID hit. And kind of everything in the country turned left. We were in an industry where, suddenly nobody could work and there was a lot of question marks, and the confidence and kind of the steadfast belief that our job as stewards of this company is to ensure that financially we can take the blow no matter what it is, so that our employees have a job. And so first and foremost, protecting the livelihoods of our team meant being really good stewards of this business so that we can continue to grow and provide an opportunity for people to work and take care of their families. We're the only business that I know of at any scale that did not engage in layoffs or furloughs. But if you take that idea and then scale it down, we started recognizing there are other ways we have to help our team. That's in many ways how our partnership with My Private Professor began, as the recognition that, particularly during this period where schools were closed, we really needed to find a way to support this brand new challenge that all of our employees were facing, which is, what am I going to do with my kids who are not getting the same kind of academic experience that they were having? And so, My Private Professor and the partnership and our ability to be able to provide this as a completely free service to our employees is probably a great example where we said, how else can we support, the lives and livelihoods of our team? And one of the things that we very quickly recognized is this is a big deal for folks with kids. But beyond that, if you think about how we've chosen to manage our business, we also intentionally create an environment where people feel valued and feel welcomed. And again, a lot of that is in how we choose to manage our teams, how we choose to create metrics that measure performance, how we choose to communicate those things, how we choose to train and develop our leaders to be good stewards of their own departments and their own team. And I think it all comes back to an environment where people feel genuinely cared about. And when you feel genuinely cared about, you want to work hard for the person caring for you. And that's probably, the biggest kind of fundamental truth to how we manage employees at our company is you got to actually care about them.
So true. It comes really down to that. Like, you just have to care about them. I think what you share about MSI's philosophy and leadership truly is exceptional. It is not something, as you see, in not only in your industry, but across the board. The pandemic definitely rocked so many companies, found opportunities. I mean, the reason that I'm so grateful that we ended up connecting, and since last year, we've been able to provide tutoring services. And if your employees are happy, they're going to want to come to work. And it is much easier to keep employees that are with you happy than trying to find some new ones to fill the spots. I would love to hear a little bit more about what inspired you to decide specifically for working with us to be able to provide tutoring.
It's such a unique offering, and something that I have not really heard about from other companies. And so I'll tell you, there are a few things. One, that kind of immediate shock to the system, I think, made it a little more obvious to us that we need to do something, as I mentioned earlier, to support this tremendous stress and pressure that was developing for our employees, because we could hear about it and we could see it. And so, the frequency with which I heard feedback, in 2020, 2021 timeframe from employees saying, I don't know how I would have been able to help my student get through math or get through this or get through that without this amazing tutor that I had. I think reaffirmed for us that we had made the right decision. So it wasn't really just a service that our employees used when schools were closed. Now that schools are back, our usage rate is going up. And that probably says something about the challenge of just the general education system in the US. But also, I think about how incredibly impactful an hour a week, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week with a tutor who can really ensure someone understands a concept or can get over the hump of something that seemed just impossible to learn. So it's been huge for us for retention. It's been great, for what we have heard in terms of reducing the stress and worry about how they're going to manage, their children's academic lives. But also, I think, in just reaffirming and communicating through action that idea that we really care about you and want you to do well. And one of the awards that we won was, it was a Culture Excellence Award in the United States for this year, and it was about employee well-being. And I think of this as an example of us taking care of our employees' well-being that goes beyond medical benefits. It goes beyond dental and vision. It goes beyond life insurance and a wellness program to try to help you lose weight. Well-being is such a bigger concept than that, and this fits in that category. It has been hugely impactful.
I appreciate you sharing also your perspective personally about just access to getting these kinds of resources growing up. The reason why I founded my private professor was because I did see that inequity between those that are able to get access to tutoring and are able to afford it financially and can get ahead, and those that are not able to, and it leaves people behind. And I don't know what your thoughts are about education. Like, to me, I feel like education is such a game changer, and get access to the tools really is the way that you can, one of the ways that you can actually lift up not only the student, but their family.
I had this very interesting journey academically growing up. I thought I was going to play basketball. I didn't care about school, but had an injury that really prevented me from pursuing a basketball career any further, and suffered from chronic migraines. And so my freshman year of high school, I had a principal, Dr. Richardson, who said, "Hey, you're in the wrong classes." And she changed all my classes and put me in this brand new college prep program that they had created. I was so fortunate for the decision that she made, because it connected me with this new crop of teachers who were trying to grow this college prep program in what is historically the lowest performing school in the city. I had received incompletes for all of my grades, and my teachers said, listen, if you'll stay for hours every day after class, we will all take turns one-on-one with you. This day, you're going to do English and Western Civ. The next day, you're going to be with math. The next day after that, you'll be with the history teacher. And so I said, I didn't have basketball to be competitive about anymore. I put all my energy and focus into not being held back a year because I missed 30 days of school. And for the first time in my life, I got all A's. And I was a C at best. And so I got all A's and was like, well, if I could do it when I was sick and I could basically make up for a quarter I missed and do the current quarter, I can do this healthy. I was fortunate. I graduated, number one in my class. Tucson, and about 1 million people had this paper who picked the best student in the town, the number one senior. And my senior year, I was awarded the number one senior graduating in Tucson. The newspaper showed up to my graduation to give me this big award. And I was 4 years prior to that a C and D student. Recruiters were in town and then introduced me to a school called Carleton College, where a private liberal arts college. And I realized, oh my gosh, I have all this opportunity. I made the choice to not go to the Ivy League school and to go to Carleton, greatest choice I ever made in my life. Again, coming from, not a college background, family had absolutely no money. School was not going to be something that my folks were going to be able to help me with. But I had the right support from them and an advocate, and then people who were willing to go above and beyond their job. And it's like, my private professor, for example, making that extra effort available to a broader scope of people. My teachers couldn't have done this for everyone. Lucky, they picked me. I got their time and attention after school. That meant other people weren't. But the ability to give that in the form of tutoring to other folks at least gets things closer.
Really moving, honestly, Chris, just to hear. I had heard bits of it, but not the full extent to where you can talk about just the level of access and the potential that someone saw, that you would hope everyone gets someone to see that in every single student. But the fact that you always were the A student that could have crushed it in any single class, you just didn't know it. I know they have like these studies that I remember reading about that would talk about, you have like students that are in the gifted class or not, but just even that label alone of knowing that you're in a space where people think you can do better really does, even if it was arbitrary on the label, those students actually excel more. And one of the things that I think that's important about whoever you use, like whatever tutor or mentor or support, it's not just the grades. It's not getting the A in physics or doing well on the SAT or learning to, do better in math. It's the confidence that it builds, the knowing and the belief of somebody that has got your back, that knows that you can succeed, that knows you can do better. And I feel like that's something that truly is the real gem out of the relationships that we try to sustain. We are fortunate to be able to help so many students that couldn't get that, not only with respect to the employees, their families, but now through the help of MSI working with us. We've partnered with Illumination Foundation, Sahara, some wonderful nonprofits, and we're providing tutoring to students that are in their shelters that would not otherwise get it. And the feedback we're receiving is, this is amazing.
Ability to hear from someone, you are capable and you can do it, and then developing that relationship with them. As you said, there are so many studies that have affirmed that in and of itself makes people capable. Back to kind of the fundamentals that we talked about in MSI, which is what we care, right? We want you to succeed. We believe that you are capable. And I think creating those types of spaces where students, regardless of where they are in their journey, can hear that is important. I recall the first real lesson I learned from a teacher early in my high school career. He went out of his way to say, how many of you have always been A students? And most of the class raised their hand. And he said, I teach because I want to. And we all knew this about him. This guy drove a Mercedes to school every day. Like, we knew this guy had money. And he said, I develop homes. I build homes. I built luxury homes. And he made it clear, I don't need to be here. I'm here because I want to. He goes, you know what else? I was a C student. Said I was a C student. He goes, you know who works for me? A students. A students make great employees. C students make good bosses because they figure some things out that A students never figured out. And he said, so if you're a C student, I'm okay with that. And it was one lesson that we learned, which is, the grade doesn't matter as much as how you think. And his whole point was everybody in this class is capable, regardless of where you came from, where you are today. As long as you learn how to learn, you're going to be successful in life.
I would love to meet your teacher. I love what you share about that, because he was so direct and honest about I'm not doing it for anything other than I purely love teaching and being there. And he sounds like he is exemplifying in the way that he talked to you all about the value of the growth mindset and just how you could apply that, whether it's to school or to life. Goes back to like what you talk about, like the culture reminds me of like MSI, of like, that's really what MSI seems to stand for. It is that growth mindset. I think that is such an asset for every individual that probably works there. And I would wonder, what are your thoughts about the education system as it is now?
My opinion on this has evolved over time. The high school I had mentioned previously was a magnet school. It was actually designed in an attempt to desegregate the city. It was largely not successful in its effort, but what it did was put a wonderfully kind of shockingly qualified group of teachers at a school that they would have never otherwise gone to. But it actually had two magnet programs. One of them was college prep. The other one was a media communication arts and technology program. And I was fortunate enough to participate in both. And I walked away with two very strong beliefs at the end of that experience. One, if you want to go to college and do well, you need a lot of help. And I got that help, and I was very fortunate. The other program was a media communication arts and technology program where it taught students how to edit video, how to run a live news broadcast, how to edit and create 3D animation using Lightwave, which is a software that was used to make the M&M candies commercials and R2-D2 and Star Wars. And it took kids who couldn't read the manual and taught them a skill that is shockingly valuable, where they were able to graduate high school and go get a job. Warner Brothers hired from Tucson, Arizona, because we were producing these kids that could go edit or could go create 3D animation. The new studios in town were hiring them, and these kids were leaving school. This is more than a couple decades ago, and 25 to 30 bucks an hour. And it unlocked opportunity for them where what they learned was effectively a vocation. And it was the modern day version of woodshop and of a welding class, but it was teaching them the tools and the skills that they needed for an entirely different, significantly valuable vocation. And so, I think we have lost a focus on some of this vocational education, which I think is equally as valuable as the college prep experience I had. And would be equally valuable to a large population of learners. And so big thing that is critically important is that vocation education. And I don't think there's enough of that focus in the country. I also think if I now think about where I am today in the business world, there's something I think is woefully missing, which I'll call practical skills. I came from an environment in a prior employer and here where we cared a lot about your attributes, about, your ability to learn, about your ability to adapt. And we didn't care as much about you walking in the door with skills. We could teach you the skills. But my observation has been there are some really practical skills that for some reason we are stubbornly not teaching students. And I'll give you a narrow example, but it's one that shocks me every time, which is, we spend so much time teaching kids math. We don't teach them how to use the tools of today that do the math for us. So, I think there needs to be a larger focus on teaching kids the concepts and the foundational things, and then teaching them how to use tools that are critically important.
I resonate so much with what you said, because I do think we're leaving people behind. And I think back in the day, Chris, getting a college degree meant that your chance of getting a job in the workforce was pretty much, there's a pretty high probability you get into it. And nowadays you see how many graduates that are not able to get the jobs that they're looking for. It's a lot tougher. In addition, even college itself, the admissions process, 20, 30 years ago versus now you could be the best of your class, perfect scores on everything, and you still have like a 2% chance. It's not even about merit anymore. It ends up almost being luck, because all of the people that are even reaching that. So I think sometimes it takes the pressure off when you realize just do your best, because it's really not up to you. But there is another category of people that if you're not going to college, we don't even address that. And there are so many, the great examples of different trade schools and vocational areas that you can help people get to where they can make a good living and they can do well. And trying to focus only on all or nothing college or graduate school or bust really leaves out a lot of individuals. So I appreciate you sharing that. What do you think is on the horizon for MSI, Chris?
The truth is, we're tied to the housing industry. The housing industry is in a bit of a pickle. And we strongly believe, and I strongly believe, problem for everyone is an opportunity for us. And right now, there is a fair amount of uncertainty in our industry. And what we see from that is tons of opportunity, whether it be MSI, taking advantage in new product categories, taking advantage of other folks in our industry who may have been entrenched in certain lines of business, creating opportunities for us to step into those lines of business. And so I think there's a few things on the horizon for us.
I appreciate everything that you've shared, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are very fortunate to be able to work with my MSI to be able to support your employees and your families. Really grateful. I appreciate you sharing so much about your alignment with maximizing potential and purpose, and just wanted to thank you for being here.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.